Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone.
Councilman, good evening. We have one will be not joining tonight, and then Councilman Michelangelo will be joining us probably just after we get started, a few minutes late. I expect Councilman Germania will be logging in here momentarily.
Okay, we are live on YouTube.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And when we call the meeting to order, I'll start the recording as well.
Mhm.
Michelle? Oh, she's not there.
Yeah, she just stepped away for a moment.
Oops.
Michelle,
Does Chief
go ahead.
McCormick need to be a panelist?
That's what I was going to ask you. If you could incorporate, if you could put him in as a panelist, weighing in on the marijuana ordinance update.
Okay,
Thank
there
you.
he is.
Thank you.
All right. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start the recording because we're almost at 6. Okay. I have 6, Your Honor.
So do I. So it is 6 o'clock. At this point, or this time, we'll call the City Council work session meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder,
Present.
Whitman.
Locations, please.
Oh, right, the locations.
City of Monroe, Michigan.
Whitman,
She's excused.
Michelangelo,
He will be joining us momentarily, just a short delay.
Vining,
Here in the city of Monroe, Michigan.
Germani,
Here in the city of Monroe.
Lamore,
Here, Monroe, Michigan.
Mayor Clark.
Present, City of Monroe, Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you.
First, good evening all. It's great to see everybody and hope everybody's remaining safe, healthy, and as the holiday season approaches for all of us. Mr. Pastu, you have 3 items, and I'll just get right to them, if you would.
Thank you, Your Honor. The first item is a discussion providing council with the marijuana ordinance update. As a means of background, back in October, City Council directed administration to work toward developing a marijuana ordinance that actually had 2 elements to it. One involving the Citizens Planning Commission to review some land use considerations. And then the second was a subcommittee that we had established that was going to look at the administrative aspect of an ordinance. So there'd be a police powers and as well as a zoning aspect to it. And so as we delved into it, our neighbors in Monroe Township were undertaking their had already adopted an ordinance and were considering applications, many of them is in excess of 20. And from our end of it, from city administration's end, we thought, let's put a hold on it and see how this transpires and provide a better understanding of what the impact may be when we look at it further here within the city itself. But I wanted to bring council up to date where we're at with it. We have kind of reignited that process again. But also what I'd like to do, and Mr. Green is going to kind of walk through the city council with some of the land use considerations, and we'll discuss some of the challenges that we have that you'll see as he walks through that. And then at the end, I'll certainly look for some feedback from city council regarding the presentation, and then we could talk a little bit further about other considerations that we may need to take into account as we move forward. So with that, if I turn it over to Mr. Green.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Try to make sure I can do this. I've only had a semester of practicing on this, so. And I take it everybody can see the map then?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. There, we're all muted, and so before we get started, as Mr. Pastu was saying, the ad hoc committee initially, and then city staff began looking at potential areas for siting marijuana facilities. And in doing that, what we came up with is, and we thought a visual representation would not simply be helpful, but necessary in order to get an idea of where we might be able to site something like that. As such, we began working with the city's GIS coordinator, Kim Rieger, to prepare a number of maps which would identify places within the city where children and families congregate, places such as schools, churches, parks, daycares, and similar issues like this, and then show them on the maps as layers. And we use these stacked layers to show the cumulative effect they have on space available in the city. Once identified, we put a 500-foot buffer around each of these locations or sites. And what we've also found is that a 1,000-foot separation between these types of places and marijuana facilities is being used or considered by a number of communities. And as such, we placed a 1,000-foot buffer on a couple of the maps just to give you a better idea of what that would look like. So of course, the first place, as we thought that children would visit, congregate, of course, is school. And that's the map you have in front of you.
Jeff,
showing, pardon me?
Sorry to interrupt. Could you just blow that up a little bit if you can, just enlarge it and see if that helps. That's probably a little bit better. Yeah.
Better?
Yeah, that's great.
Sorry about that.
Yep. No, that's fine. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. So the first place, and that's what we're looking at, are schools located throughout the community, throughout the city, with a 500-foot buffer on them. We then added daycares. Whoops, I'm gonna have to do all of them, I guess, here. Daycares, and added those on, again, with 500-foot buffers. Then parks. Then churches. And the next one, we identified residential areas because we're assuming that we're not going to locate any type of marijuana facilities within those. So we show those in red. Although we did not create a 500-foot buffer around them, we simply colored them. Now, one thing I do want to point out, if you can see where my cursor is up here on the top and the blue, near the blue, this red area right on the top is actually at the intersection of Stewart Road and North Monroe Street. That is a commercial area. That is not a residential area, but just to make sure everybody understands where we're at. But again, we've identified all of those. And what we also want to do was show you what a 1,000-foot on this would look like. And so that's really the next one that we're going to come up with, not adding anything additional, but just using a 1,000-foot buffer. And you can begin to see that areas within the city are extremely limited, for locating some of these, if we're going to utilize some of these sites and places that we've already identified. Now we went back to a 500-foot buffer, and we're back, but what we've done is include PUD zone properties within the city, things like the Lazy Boy site that we've been working on. Next, our heritage corridor areas, the development of the battlefield site, then city-owned properties, port properties on top of that. Then we've added the trailhead at the River Raisin Heritage Trail, as that gets a lot of traffic there, pedestrian traffic, but both by families, walkers, those kind of things. And then what we finally did, again, this is all at 500-foot buffers. What we did was had this go into a 1,000-foot buffer, and that will be the next one we see. And you get an idea of what the available space is in the city. So that was my last map. I would be glad to go back or answer any questions if anyone has them.
I'll see if there's any questions first off for Mr. Green. I mean, there's a lot of many maps here and many designations, but this is really kind of an exercise for council to see what what we start to have discussion on and what may be considered, and in what distance the impacts that it has, or I should say the availability as well. So if there's any one of the maps you want to go back and see, we can do that, but this is just a start point for a visual as I see it. Andrew.
Could we go back to the one that includes schools, daycares, and churches with 500 feet? Yeah, throw parks in there too.
Okay, that's at 500 feet.
And then the red with the residential, because obviously we're not going to be putting any commercial properties in a residential zone.
Yes.
This is the one I think that I find most realistic if we're to pursue something. I suppose there can be a purposeful intention on the part of council in how it zones these to be exclusive pretty much for the entire limits of the city. This, at least, I find more reasonable. We all sort of knew that the limitations of the property would be somewhat limited in terms of the areas that would be available, the areas that would be appropriate. At least from my point of view, I think that this is something more approaching appropriate. I don't know what the rest of council has to say.
Okay, I see Brian, you have your hand up, and I'll see if other comments from council. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Jeff, are these recommendations by a particular organization, the state, or do you find that other municipalities are following 500-foot or 1,000-foot buffers?
Yeah, we're seeing both of those buffers used. And again, we've identified those kind of locations, as I said, where you'll find children congregating. They'll be in proximity to that, or families even that are going in. And that's the reason we kind of looked at those. Again, I don't know that they're, for all of those, I don't know that there's any specific requirements, but I know there is probably for schools. And we would have to check and see. But again, I think it just gives a good idea of the spaces that are available. Because if you look on here, even the spaces that are open at this point, a number of those are not going to be utilized for that. And I'm looking at where the Lazy Boy world headquarters is now. That's that, even though that's open and it's up here in blue, right in this area, and the green area, the PROS, still is probably not going to be something that's going to house or locate a marijuana facility.
Thank you.
Jeff, just I guess review of as you went through these steps from the schools, the parks, the churches, and daycare facilities, those were the 4 items that were spelled out in the 2018 proposal. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So then we went through the other items just to give a visual for council there. You know, when you talked about the Lazy Boy property up there, that pointing out that commercial area that's on Stewart Road is right now currently, I think, medical offices and some type of other commercial, but mostly medical offices.
Yeah, there are a number of different types of medical related offices, doctors' offices, quick care type of facilities, those kind of things in that particular complex. And then there's a car wash next door to that.
Brian, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, I do. Jeff, is there any reason why there's a difference between 500 and 1,000 foot? I mean, is it just basically pick of the litter, or what's the reasoning behind having 500 foot buffer, 1,000 foot buffer?
Well, as I said, I think we're seeing both being used in communities, but we do find this with adult regulated uses, and a lot of those are the 1,000 foot. And so we kind of look to that for these marijuana facilities. And what we found is that some of these facilities are getting creative because if you don't spell out exactly how it is and what your buffers are going to be and how they're defined, some of them are trying to measure from door space instead of the property edge. They're from the very door, which then again puts them all closer together potentially. And so what we're looking at is from the outside of the perimeter of the properties and creating the buffers there. But there is, and we could, if you council wanted to say we wanted 500, I'm sure we could do that. If council wants to say 1,000, I think there's plenty of support and use of that in other communities. So it's not something that would be novel or new.
Can you show me the 1,000 foot buffer again, please?
Right there.
Thank you.
And that's without the trailhead, that's without the PUD, and let me see if I can go. That would be with all the additional items on there.
And I think the nice thing that this shows, it just shows how landlocked we really are in the city of Monroe.
Yeah, and that's certainly one of the challenges we've had, not only with development coming in. I mean, any type of development that comes in is where do they locate? How do they go in? You know, where can we fit them? And I think this is just one more element of that.
Jeff, if you go back to the 500 for me, and then Michelle Germaini, you had a question, hand up. Oh, Mr. Buzz does too, but go ahead, Michelle.
Which 500?
What did we use for the?
That's fine.
That's fine. The geofencing that was used on the map, did it go from the door of the addresses that you use? How did you do the geofencing?
What we put on there was basically from the, I believe they did it was from the corners of the properties. That's typically how we do, in planning, that's typically how we do any types of notices that go out by planning statutes. Anytime we send notices out to adjacent properties when we're having some sort of public hearing, it's all based on going around from the edge of the property. And I did have a conversation with Mr. Tellerico when we were looking at this early on, and he agreed with that as well.
Yeah, if we went to the 1,000 feet, that leaves us nothing to work with at all. All right, thank you.
Mr. Buds, your hand's up.
Your Honor, I did just want to say also that under the initiated law under which we would be talking about these regulations, that at least one of the distances that's set as a default is for distances from schools. So the law provides that if it's 1,000 foot buffer from a pre-existing public or private school providing education in kindergarten and 1 through 12, grades 1 through 12, unless the municipality adopts an ordinance that reduces that distance requirement. So that's within the council's purview, but I thought it appropriate to point out the default rule is set at 1,000 from schools unless otherwise reduced by the council.
Okay, well, that's helpful information. We may have at a future opportunity to view this at the 500, but increasing the schools to 1,000 just to get that impression in our mind as well. Something for the future. Other questions or comments at this time for Jeff or Kelly? Go ahead.
So what's next?
Well, I'll look to Mr. Pastu, but I think this gives us a visual of understanding and some dialogue of what might first on a distance and location, and if there's any areas that might be a complication for council or for discussion. Of course, the second part of this is looking at the and those were provided the definitions of marijuana establishments and what the council may be looking at or having an appetite for regarding those types, whether it be all, none, some, and how we have that dialogue. But Mr. Pastu, would you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I think in part, we're going to probably ask the same question. How do you want us to proceed? I think, in light of what Mr. Butts had mentioned, and I've lost, I think, some track of that, is maybe if we set a buffer at 1,000 feet for schools and continue to use, 500, which I'm getting the sense that may be the appetite of council to take a look at that. And then I think probably as we go through it, maybe having even a more dialogue in more detail about some of the other areas that we identified. For example, the Heritage Corridor, whether we want to incorporate that or not. The PUDs, that's a separate question as well. The trailhead. So there's all these things is that if we do come to a public hearing, I mean, you will have to be, I think have to dot the I's and cross the T's proverbial to. In the event that it gets a challenge from someone in the public, well, why did you do that? Did you think of that? And those are the type of things why we're having this discussion is so that when we get to that point, that it is as well thought out as we would like. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at from council is tell us if you want it at 500, we can work that, put 1,000 on the schools. And then, I can continue to kind of work with Mr. Green and our GIS coordinator to fine tune this a bit. And part of it is that there's going to have to be a discussion as well as to, the number of establishments. I did put that in the correspondence to city council as to what those definitions are. I went up to the third floor conference room and obviously what I put on the desktop for tonight's meeting, I can't view. So I'm shooting blind on it right now. But the point of it is how many of these establishments do you want? And what will also go along with them are the regulations associated with the special land use. What are the conditions? Each of them will be different, whether it's a dispensary, whether it's a grow facility, and those type of things. For example, we talked about need for water, security. May have an issue with our industrial pretreatment program, depending on the operations. All these things are certain special conditions that you would contemplate as part of a special land use. And then the other part of it is okay, what do you want? You want these separated? You don't want them probably clustered within your community. So where I'm going with this is that we can redo these maps again and then continue the discussion as to how you want to refine this. And then ultimately, one of the things, and this is going to be a broader question for Mr. Butts to bring to council, is there is a concern about the manner in which you accept applications and consider them for approval, because a lot of communities are now starting to experience problems like, why did you go with them and not us, and those type of things, since there is in many cases, a limitation on the number of establishments. And so it's a long response to the question, but part of it is just to get your feedback to go forward, because if you looked at a lot of the standard means by which you would consider these land use issues, you basically ran out of land.
Hey, Andrew, I see you have a hand up before you start. I'll have something I want to add as well, but just want to read these through again. I know Vince didn't have a sheet with them, but just as we think these through and as we move forward, the next step, of course, the marijuana establishment's the overall definition there. There's marijuana grower, marijuana microbusiness, marijuana processor, marijuana retailer, marijuana secure transporter, and marijuana safety compliance facility. That's the lab. Andrew, your question.
On the committee, was there any talk of the number, type, and then the licensing fee structure?
Not to this point. I'll be honest with you, as we went through this, the land use consideration is paramount, we thought, and then that will drive a lot of those administrative related items.
Andrew, I don't know if you're referring as far as the fee, but by the proposal, it's 5,000 no matter per location or per I should say per establishment, and that's the max in which it can be.
Okay, thank you.
And again, I think as Mr. Pastu was alluding to, this is going to be two separate ordinances. One, which is the zoning related items. The second is the applications and making those determinations of who and what will get those or be awarded licenses through the city. So again, two separate things, and how we deal with them will be separate. So just keep in mind.
Jeff, if you go back to the 500 for a minute, because I have a comment and I see Brian has his hand up. I'll throw mine in and then I'll get to Brian.
How far back? Which one would you like to see?
I think it's the next one back to where the North Dixie is present, just with the items that were in the ballot proposal. Yeah, that map there.
Okay.
So again, this is the one that has the 4 items that were within the 2018 ballot initiative. So I look at I'll just say it's the area just right of the green, which is the North Dixie Highway. And I think of that in relation to the national park, our corridor. It provides a corridor off of 75 that comes into the city. It is the direct access to the national park. While there may be opportunities for whatever type we are talking about, I see that to be a challenge to what it is where our long-term master plan and thought process is along that corridor. So that one just is my start point of thinking, between Noble up to the curve and going under the Dingle Bridge. While it is a corridor, is what are we looking to have that develop as? Behind the Ace Hardware and that, I have probably less concern. It doesn't have items that come into our national park families and those type of things. Brian had his hand up, and then I'll get back to you, Andrew. Brian, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'd like to see that new map created with the 500-foot buffer and the 1,000-foot for the churches, or I'm sorry, for the schools, just to see that revamped, get a better idea, and maybe something that's going to give us a little bit better idea of what exact location we're talking about for each of these openings or potential openings. That way we can really make a more educated decision, I believe, as to whether or not we want to make it 1,000, 500, whatever that happens to be. But I think those are things that we need to really see to digest it and actually put it out there and formulate some kind of an answer with it.
Okay, I think that Jeff's comment as well about the 2 ordinances there, and one's about the really zoning and what it's going to be. Then we'll have to have the discussion as a council. What do we have the appetite for regarding any of these facilities? Andrew, go ahead. Oh, you muted, sir.
Thank you, sir. I do agree with Councilman Lamore that not only should we look at where the buffer zones are, where we're not going to be allowing businesses, but also where the potential locations for them might be, so that we know how much we're opening it up. And then if there's going to be if we give a license and a shop opens up, we can't have a business within 250, 500 feet of that business, so that they're not clustered in one part of town. We do see open parts of the map that I don't think are open, which I think that Councilman Lamore's request is going to take care of. For example, On the east side of town, it's either the port or the DTE property or the Ford property. And a lot of that green portion over there is either swamp or like a retention pond. You're not building anything over there, even though it looks fairly open. I think that a lot of the city-owned property is going to be, red unless, council says otherwise and wants to sell the property just by default, as is the National Park and the Heritage Corridor properties. I don't imagine that that those are going to be, open for development, regardless of whether we put a buffer around them or not. Anyway, those properties are going to be reserved for a prior use. I think regarding the mayor's discussion about the nature of the Dixie Highway corridor coming off of 75, I think that that's probably a collective discussion we should have with Frenchtown and how they've developed that corridor over the last several decades. And I think it's largely been either hotel properties coming off the highway or largely industrial and logistic. And the character that we try and create there is going to probably inevitably have to match whatever they do, just given the proximity and given, it's the same corridor we're talking about. And I think that those discussions need to be had on the Telegraph corridor with Frenchtown as well. It doesn't do us any good if one of us says, well, this is the character I want to develop here, if the other one, isn't game for that. And then lastly, if we're going to make, I'm fine making, setting the schools to 1,000-foot buffer and keeping churches and parks at 500 feet. But if schools should be given 1,000-foot buffer, so should daycares, given the proximal use there and what the utility it's accomplishing. So just my 2 cents, and then we can come back and look at the availability of property within the city and what that's actually going to look like. And then given that, how many licenses would be feasible and would be prudent. In my opinion, I think we're talking single digits, perhaps low single digits in terms of even potential for what we're going to put in the city. If that gives the community sort of an idea of what we're talking about. I don't think we're talking about anything approaching what was in the 20 plus that was in the proposal. Frankly, I don't know where you'd put them. And then, or the 20 some that the township was talking about. I don't think it's going to be anything approaching that number. And then, did the committee discuss anything regarding medical marijuana facilities separately of commercial or retail marijuana?
I'll leave that to Mr. Green or Mr. Buds. I mean, medical marijuana currently exists within the city as the state statute permits, and it can currently. Mr. Green, and then I'll get to Michelle, who has.
We did not talk about medical marijuana, but I was just going to reiterate that, or make that statement, Mr. Mayor, is that the city has always allowed anything that's allowed under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, which is 5 patients and a caregiver, has always allowed that. That has never been anything that's off the table. But we did not talk specifically about medical marijuana.
Understood. Thank you.
Michelle Germaini.
Thank you, Your Honor. We also have to discuss the zoning end of it. What are we going to allow for retail? What areas? And would a warehouse be considered a manufacturing area? Or is that considered something else?
Well, I'll probably defer to, again, Jeff or Matt. I think part of which ties to your question really ties to Andrew's comments as well, is, allowing facilities. I said, but as he stated, but we also have to decide what on that list of facilities are we talking about. I think that's really the start point. Is it the lab testing? Is it a processor? Are we considering the micro businesses and things like that? I think that's going to also drive, what the zoning will come out to what might be permissible. Other questions?
I envision, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Detroit Avenue back there could be some warehousing back there, if that's the kind of area we want that in. Of course, there's residential back there too.
Right, that you see that one little circle in there on the, it goes back there by Detroit Avenue. That's where the small residential, not, well, it's residential, but there's also a circle there.
There is a church there, Mr. Mayor.
Right, I'm sorry, that's, I was trying to
Oh,
remember-
yes, there is.
I was trying to remember which one it was, but you're right, there was some residential back there also. But it is our industrial park, as we all know.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Green.
One other thing, just again, picking up on your comments related to Dixie Highway, North Dixie Highway. I've worked on the battlefield and the issues related to that for about the last 25 years. And we have not seen a lot of movement of uses in that area leaving. Some that we would like to see out of there to develop that corridor more, but we have some industrial uses, and it's point being is once you get a use in, it's liable to stay there for a long, long time if it's allowed in there. And while we would like to see some of those more industrial uses there or buffered more, we have not been successful with that. So it's always something to keep in mind as well. Again, where you would like to have these types of facilities sited and exactly what the facilities are.
Okay, looking to make sure we cognizant of our time, because we have a couple other items as well about that 6:30 mark or so. But I do want to, it's good discussion, so I want to make sure we get every opportunity from the members if there's questions or comments at this point. Or if Vince, if you have any follow-up or what you might be looking
No,
for.
I think that, in many ways, I thought we'd spend a little more time talking about. That's why I kept some of the other items fairly light to me. But yeah, I think unless there's anything else with council to talk about, I think we got some direction that we need to keep moving to the next phase. And so I'm trying to think out loud, and maybe this is something that now that you have a list of the different types of establishments, maybe what we might do is take a look at what type of special land use considerations would go with each of those. We talked about a grow operation, warehousing, and even processing, whether that may be more appropriate in an industrially zoned area, and what type of special considerations that would go along with that. So we can look at it a little bit more and maybe offer some suggestions, but also with the map, you'll have a better sense of where that might fit, after we go through this next iteration of buffers and what have you.
And one final comment, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Sure, Mr. Green.
I think also we probably want to look at residential areas and possibly putting the buffer on those. We haven't done it on these maps, but the reason I'm saying that is you have a lot of areas that have the potential to back right up to residential areas. Telegraph Road would be one of those. So again, you have these types of businesses coming in. So it's something to be thinking about whether you want to do that or not. Create a buffer for the residential areas or simply use them as we've shown here. So just something to think about for the future.
And we might be able to put something together like that as well, that if we did provide a buffer, just so you have a sense of what that impact would be. Yeah, we knew that when after we started looking at some of these buffers that, and then you add the residential and that the land area available was going to get pretty limited. So, but as Mr. Green indicated, that may be something appropriate, particularly where these residential areas are in relationship to some of the corridors in the community. So, I'll be honest with you, I think in some ways you're probably looking at something along Telegraph more than likely, and something, certainly industrial operations. And then the question is up in the North Dixie area, how that might fit. But I see those as primarily the three areas that may, give some consideration to, having some establishments. So.
And before I get to your question, there's one item that I know that came up during the committee, and we hadn't yet looked at where that might have an impact or not. But there are parks that are not within the city that adjoin a couple of the areas. Heck Park particularly was one of those. And I don't think they speak to jurisdiction about that. So we'll have to, refine that as well. Andrew, your question. Oh, and then I'll get to Chief McCormick.
If I may briefly respond to the mayor and then Director Green, if we write the ordinance to say not within 500 feet of a church or a school, I don't know that it would really matter. It's not shown on the map, but I don't know that the ordinance would matter whether or not that church or school is in the city or not. So I think that might take care of itself, even though it might be more difficult to visualize. And then in response to Director Green regarding the residential properties, I think adjacency, he correctly illustrates, probably is going to be the largest concern there. Maybe we could get away with something with a buffer far less than 500 feet. I mean, 50 feet, 10 feet might do it, because that would eliminate any adjacency. And then lastly, just informational for myself, maybe a question for Chief McCormick while we have him here. What's the current offense for selling marijuana in the city without a license?
I know Chief had his hand up as well. So Chief McCormick, comment, and then the question.
Sure. Mayor, to your first point, that's just what I was going to point out is at that last meeting, we identified that area there in North Dixie, which is obviously Heck Park would be situated right kind of in that little hunk, looks like a piece of pizza there. Yep. And then if we go over to the, like where the Walgreen is there on Stewart Road, right across the street from the Pro Medical Laboratories there's about half a dozen residences. And then just west of there is the Garden Court apartment complex. So selling marijuana without a permit would still be the same charge it has been prior to the law being changed. If someone was, although that unfortunately there's not a lot of appetite in prosecution in those cases right now, but it would be a felony to operate, to sell marijuana if you weren't in an establishment that was authorized to do so.
Andrew, follow up, or is that?
That answers my, just had the question, that's all.
Sure. Other questions, comments, council, thoughts? So Vince, as we move forward and just because I know that we're going to have the discussions coming up on regarding the types and the definitions, I think we as a council need to understand what each of those definitions mean. There's, it's like anything else. It's written in a fashion, but the words are there. But what do they mean, and what could they mean? I think I read a couple of them, and I think I understand what it is. But when it refers to the distribution or selling, it says to a marijuana establishment, you go up to that definition, and everything is in there. So what does that mean? And I look to Mr. Buds probably to hopefully clarify some of that for us the best he can as well.
Well, probably in our case, we'll need a little time to work on this, but I'm trying to figure out our schedule. Maybe at the January 19th work session, we can give you another update where we're at with it. Might not be ready for it on January 4th, but certainly on the 19th. So.
Okay. Other thoughts? If not, John.
Thanks, Your Honor. I guess I don't have a problem with the buffers, but because Monroe is a historic community, we have a number of churches, a number of parks, a number of other facilities that are scattered all over. You kind of want to take a look at recreational marijuana primarily as, based on what I'm seeing on the maps, we may want to be more strategic than relying on buffers to where we want to locate certain facilities. But I'll wait for the next set of maps to come out. But we may want to be more strategic in terms of our decisions where these different uses go.
Yeah, I guess I'll follow up to that, John. I think that we, as was started and kind of went through it pretty quickly when you added the POD, the Heritage Corridor, and really some of those items, and we at least dialogue through those, what we vision for the long term, what has been, and what we're going to do. It's kind of why I just brought the Dixie Corridor. It wasn't running all the way out. It's just that's adjoining to the national park, and it transitions. It changes once we get to the Dingle Bridge and you get out the other side. It does change in a visual in that, but that's directly adjacent, I think kind of sets the, as you said, it, being strategic about what we want in the growth to be and how. So I think we need to be strategic in what we might support and where. And I think that once we get the other maps, I think we'll be a little bit closer to maybe having that discussion too.
If I might just, Mayor, interject, in some ways, it's a very good conversation to have. I will tell you from my end of it, in going to this format, using a standard process that you would with buffers for adult regulated uses. Obviously, you see where we're at that point in time, but it does drive the discussion. If we're going to do this, it's got to be more strategic. And I think in some ways we're talking a little bit about that, although not in that specific term when we were looking at it with our subcommittee. But it is really where it drives it to. Where would it make the sense if we're going to allow for a few establishments and what those and where would they likely go? And so, again, using the buffering, but also, what other facilities may be appropriate for a rehab that may drive some of that consideration. So.
Okay, I don't see any other comments. I just remind me that Andrew, your comment on the really being also strategic of distance between all. I know there's a community that's currently not Monroe Township, but north of us that's going through a lot of turmoil with this and different councils and changes. And they had a small 2 or 3 square mile area and 20 some. They approved 6 or 7, I believe in it, but they had that many more applications than not. And how do you fit all those within a 2 square mile area too? So I think it's part of the discussion of, of how we balance that, but we have to be prepared to also respond to that. And I think that's what's happening elsewhere is why that one and not us. And I think that's a whole criteria of the discussion as we get to that later on as well. If there's no other comments. All right. I think we have some things and we'll move forward. Thank you, Mr. Green and Vince. And
the next item is that we've had a proposal with our longtime contractor to extend the existing contract for another 3 years. As I mentioned, I don't have it in front of me since I put it on my desktop in my office and I'm up on the 3rd floor. So I'm going to ask Patrick if he will kind of walk us through a little bit with that, given the quality of work that we've been satisfied with and really, in many ways, the almost no cost increase over a period of time. We're of the opinion it may be worth it, but wanted to bring it to council for discussion. Patrick.
There we go. Can everybody hear me?
yes.
All right. Thank you. Michelle just had to upgrade me to a panelist. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. Patrick Lewis, Director of Engineering and Public Services. Yes, I will step through that on the city manager's behalf here. Most of it's contained in the fact sheet, some of the bullet points that I wanted to make here, but we've used Noah Lawn Service for as our primary grass contractor since 2014. That was the second 5-year bid for our grass contract. And at the time, we had broken that into 6 different classifications of work. Since then, the ordinance mowing has kind of come to an on-call as needed contract. And then one of those we took back ourselves, and that was mowing of some of the riverbank areas. Now that we got a new attachment onto our mower, and we kind of took that ourselves. So what's happened since then, the contract was originally due to expire in 2018. Mr. Knoll, back in 2017, had offered us a 10% discount if we extended him for 3 years from 2019 to 21, which the council did vote to execute on that one. And we're coming up to 1 more year left on that extension. And I'm not terribly surprised Mr. Knoll offered us a similar deal again this time. This time was just a 5% decrease. And the way we've handled that, there is a trigger in the contract each year that the cost will go up with the CPI. And we've got a matrix on there. And with the fact sheet, I did attach that, the matrix that we use, and that's the Detroit metro area. We use the February to February numbers because that's the one closest to when we start the contract work in April. So lastly, I've got with your packet an Excel spreadsheet that kind of shows what our costs have tracked since 2014. And the 3 rows at the bottom are in green. Those would be the 3 years that would be subject to extension, with the row in yellow, the year coming up, which we do not yet know the CPI adjustment, although it's tracking pretty low. The February 2020 to October 2020 is only at 0.5%. So, and if I were to step you through the CPI adjustments in there, we actually had from 2014 to 17, we only had a 2% increase for all 3 years because it actually backed off the first year of the contract. So I gave you an example on Group A, which is the large parcels. That's Custer Airport and Munson Park, but it tracks the same. All of the locations track the same. And the first year of the contract, we actually paid $58,000 for that work, as opposed to this year, we're only paying $55,926 for it. So if you look at a 2% adjustment for the next 4 years, even with this offer, we're still actually paying less than we would be in 2014. Now, we can't predict for sure the CPI adjustment for those last 4 years, but unless you get closer to 3%, we're still going to be paying less than we did at the first year of the contract. So staff thinks it's certainly something worth discussing. It's advantageous for the city to consider because we lock in our pricing another 3 years. We've had really no issues with Noel. Obviously with that amount of work, you're always going to have something that gets missed here and there. Woodland Cemetery is always a challenge in the wet season. That's one where it is hard to get in there in May and get all the string trimming done on a regular cycle. But I would say they've performed very well for us. One of the things that I always like to point out every time we talk about our lawn contracts is when you add up the acreage that we mow, it's kind of staggering. Look at those maps we had just a few minutes ago. We're mowing 9% of the city under this contract. So that means the city has quite a bit of acreage within our city limits. So this is no small contract. I did list for you just for reference. The total contract value for 2020 was right about 162,000. And I didn't list it in years prior to that because, as I mentioned, Ron didn't have every single piece of that. He didn't have the cemeteries earlier on. And we change every time we buy a vacant lot, that number changes a little bit. If we sell property, it comes off the list. So, and the reason we grouped them into separate groups with separate pricing is the unique nature of them. It's going to take a lot less effort per acre to cut Munson Park and the airport as it would the cemetery and your scattered site lots. So that's pretty much all I have. We do not have it on for action tonight because we wanted to give you an opportunity to discuss this a little further if you wanted. But staff thinks obviously certainty in the vendor and certainty in the pricing are things that we should bring forward for your discussion. So I'll leave it at that for now, Mayor.
I'm muted now. Thanks, Patrick. I'll see if there's any questions from council. If I understood Patrick real quick, Noel's currently doing the Woodland Cemetery. Is that correct?
Yes, he's doing the Woodland Cemetery is one grouping, and he's doing Woodland and Memorial Place. So There's a cemetery group, and then there's the large parcel group. He's doing the downtown parking lot, the riverfront lot, as sort of a separate thing, a separate pricing on that one, and then the large body of work, which is the scattered sites all over the place. So those are the 4 groups we put them in.
Thanks. Did he take that the Woodland Cemetery sometime during this current year, or was that at the start?
That was in 2019 because the 5-year contract we originally had, U.S. Lawns got that piece of it, and they got our ordinance mowing, and we'd had some challenges with them late years on that. When that contract expired, Ron had already extended his pieces of that through 2021. And then we actually put the cemeteries out for bid and got no bidders.
Okay.
So then Ron offered us a price on that one, and we took that to council. So that's actually how that worked. We couldn't get any takers for that, nor could we for the ordinance mowing, which he also now has.
All right, I appreciate it. I was just trying to get a time frame for myself and council. Yep. Questions for Patrick from council? Andrew, and then I'll go to Brian.
Yeah, I know that the cemeteries and the historical places were sort of maybe the unpopular parts of this, but also the parts we've had trouble with in the past. I was wondering if the quality of the mowing and trimming that was done there was acceptable. I don't know if I know Councilman Angeli brought it up last time. with how the some of the headstones were cared for and trimmed around, so as not to damage them or cause issues there. I know that this has been a sticking point in the past. I was wondering how we were doing on that particular point of the contract.
Sure. Perfectly acceptable question and reasonable one, since I know that did come up. We had a discussion with him following those concerns raised by council. I'm not aware that we had any further complaints as the year went on. I will admit to not being able to do weekly checks there myself. It gets too daunting to be able to do that frequently. I can never say that it's never happened again. But that is one of the challenges on that lot. Not that great of an answer, I guess, but we haven't heard of any concerns raised since that time it was brought up at the council level. I have to presume that means we haven't seen any or heard of any further, but I can't make you an absolute guarantee that hasn't happened since.
Okay, I guess I'll just say that my drives through, but also a couple of residents that called periodically. They were calling because of the time at which they were doing the cutting, and it seemed to be when people were visiting because it seemed to fall on the weekend. I think some of that's been adjusted because I've not received through the end of the fall, I'll say, or even before the end of summer, that I received any additional calls on that. So I'm not saying it's 100%, but I would say that I've not received calls since the summer. Brian, your comment or
Thank you,
question?
Your Honor. That answered some of my question right there, as a matter of fact, because sounds like they are fairly responsive, which is good. The other thing is, do we have anything to compare them to as far as another lawn service where we could say these guys, just like US Lawn, were they horrible in response time? Do they just not come back and do what they were asked to do? Versus Knoll, where it seems like they're pretty responsive and come back and try to take care of whatever's necessary.
I can answer that with respect to U.S. Lawns, because we have experience with them. We've had, I guess I'll say, since I've been managing this contract in 2008, we did a 1-year trial in 2008, and then we did a 5-year in 2009. And the significant contractors we've had have been Knoll, U.S. Lawns, and then we had a company called Grass Gators out of Petersburg prior to that. That was, I think it's now defunct. U.S. Lawns, the challenge we had with them was that, and this was both with ordnance mowing and the cemetery, is they operated out of Southgate. They had a pretty wide territory, and they only tried to come into town 2 or 3 days a week at most. So if you had a rain day, all of a sudden they're down to 1 day a week. And trying to catch up when you were behind, that was the biggest problem that we had with them. And that was both with the ordnance and the cemetery. I would say certainly Knoll has performed, in particularly the last couple of years of U.S. Lawns involvement. They were pretty good to start, but Knoll's performed considerably better than U.S. Lawns across the board. Grass Gators, we actually had to terminate part of their contract, and that was back in 2016. So we don't have a lot of experience with other lawn services, simply as far as the volume. We did use Jack's Lawn Service for our ordnance mowing prior to 2008. So, and they were always very responsive to us on that. But as far as I know, Jack's is not interested in this contract. They actually didn't bid on the ordnance mowing either the last time we put it out there. So I think some of it's a question too of being able to find, there may be numerous lawn services throughout the county, but those that are willing to engage such a large contract. And I will say, Ron, he does, it's almost a 50-50 partnership with Hunter Lawn Service. They do quite a bit of our acreage. So it's not really a joint venture, so to speak. The bills go through Ron, but I know he employs Jason and his staff for quite a bit too. So not sure we have a ton of other places we could compare it to for this volume.
Thank you.
John, your question.
Thanks, Mayor. I know that when we talked about this a couple of years ago, the council had asked Jeff Green to monitor the cemeteries and let council know if they were being maintained appropriately. I see Jeff's online. Just wanted to ask him his opinion.
There he goes.
Sorry about that. It was a mouse that wasn't wanting to work with me on this one. Yeah, I have followed up since that request came from the council and Councilman Angeli. I do go through periodically, take a look at it. I take photos if I need to. The grass has been pretty well maintained. I think probably more of the problem that we've seen is with just the dumpster on the site overflowing, trash around the site not picked up, those kind of things. Grass hasn't really been an issue, but I haven't seen them in there when previously I was able to get I'd get photos when they were doing the cutting, prior contractors. But most of the time that I've seen it looked fairly good. It's a hard process because you could actually have somebody in there cutting all day long every day, literally, and just moving from one end to the other. They don't do that, but it's been in pretty decent shape.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Thanks, John.
Hey, Your Honor, I would ask Jeff, did we talk about actually putting a dumpster enclosure out there at the cemetery? Did we not?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I think that would be helpful and again, probably, I don't know who is doing our, picks up the waste over there, if it's a private contractor, or if that's handled through Roselawn, but that may be something that we want to have a discussion with them on.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add if it's okay that, yeah, the dumpster contract is part of Roselawn's contract management over there. So that's, and council will see that we submitted some funding requests for dumpster enclosures with this year's CIP, and that was a location that I had in mind too. And increasing the frequency of pickups, we can put it under the city's contract if that would make it easier. And we probably will do that, but as of right now, it's under Roselawn's contract.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, John. Other questions for Patrick?
So going forward, I mean, the issue is if you're okay with it, we can start looking at putting a renewal together. The other alternative obviously would be next year to bid it out at that point. So
I see some nods in support. Just no other comments.
Go with the renewal.
Yeah, I'd say move forward. I agree. Okay, that's what I see.
Appreciate the discussion. And
yeah.
And the good part of it is too, is we did have a discussion last week regarding the dumpsters and the cemetery. So it is on staff's radar. It's not like it's, forgotten. So we did have that last week as well. So, all right.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. This, I think, another item, and maybe if there's something else.
Yep. Just quickly, I've had some discussion with Loretta LaPointe regarding where we are with, the parks reservations and recreation programs. A lot of times after the first of the year, it kind of triggers a lot of registrations for both programs and parks. And what we're, and while there is some optimism certainly with the vaccinations, the other part of it is that you see that the caseloads from caseloads and hospitalization rates continue to rise. And so, our suggestion is to continue at least through the end of February and come back and evaluate. We don't anticipate, we may very well be able to put some of the programs back in place, but maybe a little later than when they normally start. But we're just looking to, be a little more cautious, probably go through the end of February. And the one exception is the, the reservations for garden plots. Those are perfectly fine for the, as far as taking reservations and the social distance. And so, but other than that, just wanted to keep council up to date. I know the Department of Health and Human Services was going to be issuing some more orders, with the, throughout the state as well. So any thoughts or discussions?
Andrew?
It doesn't look, in the list provided, it doesn't look like anything's really getting going before April.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we just, but we felt need to keep you updated on it.
Yeah.
Because you may very well, because right after the first of the year, they start getting engaged with the planning and programming for the year. In the event, if you get any contact, is that we're still kind of just, we'd like to play it by ear for a couple more months and then give you a more definitive plan depending on where we are with the pandemic. So
As vaccinations continue to be deployed, hopefully by April, things will be in a different position.
Yep.
So, okay, thank you.
anything else? Otherwise, Mayor, if I may go through a couple of things.
Sure. I think we could opportunity to talk about the agenda as well.
All right.
We can review some of the needs regarding the structure of the agenda.
Well, just an update on a couple of items before we go into the agenda. One is, if you recall, a couple of years ago, we had the fire department had done a presentation regarding selling off 3 of the apparatus and purchasing 2. And this last week, we were able to sell the last fire truck to a small department out in Kansas. And so at the end of the day, I believe we'll probably do a quick reconciliation, but we ended up doing better than we thought we would with the sale of those 3 fire trucks. So I think everyone's very happy that they're gone. The other part of it is I wanted to mention, we've been working on capital improvements, and that will actually be an item we'll talk about in just a moment. But we've worked with Mark Russell on Labor Park and now giving some thought to Carnes Park. We have $2 million was based on the park plans, which I think was a very aggressive plan. And I'll be candid with you, it would be difficult to finance something like that, that magnitude in 2022 if we were to go forward, even if we're able to secure a DNR grant and even use some CDBG money. But what I'd like to do is to initially engage Russell Design. It would probably be Loretta, myself, and Mark Russell in looking at the scope of the project and trying to come to some aspect that we think would be a little more affordable and certainly still keep within the spirit of the park plan that would allow for an addition in the future if we can. But I don't anticipate that it's going to be something that would need to come to council. It'd probably be within my purchasing threshold, but I'd like to get started on that sooner than later with that. So thoughts, comments?
Andrew?
Yes, sir. In terms of determining the scope of the parks plan, was that not accomplished when we outlaid what the parks plan was for the next couple of years? Because I know that we had seen plans of what we had planned to spend on each park and even some designs for the parks that we wanted to work on. So I just want to be clear about what we're trying to accomplish here above and beyond what was already done in the past.
Well, I think part of it is to look at a phased approach to it so that it's a little more affordable, find out where maybe the low-hanging fruit or the more visible impacts would be and how we can initiate that maybe even as a first phase. Otherwise, a couple $1 million is a pretty significant bite to try and take all at once. So, and clearly I think there's a need for some improvements with the park there at Carnes. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that progression, there's some forms of that moves us then to the following parks that might have adjustments as well. It's really coming up what is, what's still, I guess, the priority within those, and how do we move forward with part of it? John, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Your Honor. The master, when I serve on the liaison on the Parks Committee, and the master plans were based on full build out. And it was always assumed that each of the master plans would be phased over a period of time. So the proposal that Vince is making about, taking a look at it and phasing the Carnes Park based on budget is really within the overall intent of the master plan itself. There was never an intention that each of the parks would be built out at one time. The one that happened to be was Labor Park, but Carnes, Munson, and St. Mary's Park, it was always understood they would be phased.
And so with this exercise, if council is fine with it, what I would do is, once that is completed, I'll probably set up a work session with Loretta and Mr. Russell, and just kind of walk through, okay, here's what we're considering and proposing, and then ultimately probably lead to a design that would take place somewhere later in 2021. So that would be the idea.
It's great.
So we get into the agenda, Mayor?
Sure.
Okay,
You want to start or you want me to?
I'll let you go.
All right, fine. So on our agenda this evening, we just had a brief start on it at the start of the work session. There item on the to amend the agenda, as we received a notice from the administration regarding a closed session to be added to the agenda. And looking at that, you know, just where to place that. And a lot of times we'll just place them at the end. I did talk with Clerk Treasurer Lavoie as well, but you know, maybe up front after the first citizens comment time. It could be before or after, but it gets us through the first comments, but also then able to step away for the closed session and then come back and finish the agenda. I think about that as opposed to at the end we're going to closed session. I'm not saying there's going to be anything of action, but putting those closed sessions up front and those that are attending, seeing that we're not coming back when, you know, a period of time and then some action being taken, because we've been asked that before. So my thought would be we'd want to put it after the first opportunity of citizens comment. The other item which was brought up in the administration is asking is on item 2987 of the holiday grant budget amendment. Doesn't require amendment to the agenda, but the request is to have that pulled by one of the council members because there is an update from the administration regarding the funding amount on one of them that we need to have a discussion on. So there's a slight adjustment on that on the budget amendment. Not significant, but still something that of importance to have to clarify what that amount is. Those are the two I had. Vince, was there anything further?
No, I think that covered the items from administration.
Okay. And Clerk Treasurer Lavoie, I know we chatted it and make sure I didn't miss something that I said previously.
No, that will work, Your Honor.
Okay. Any questions from council on those two? Are just appropriate. What I'll do is we get through start through the agenda, and after the pledge, and it comes to amended the agenda, I'll be making that comment again. So the public knows why that is coming up for an amendment. And it's because the item came in after the agenda was posted and was finalized. It's something that came in late Friday. So, and then I'll ask for some action from council if there's any questions. Okay. Vince, anything further? Or maybe I should ask council. Okay, Vince, is there anything from council that's, of course, on our work session as time permits, anything on the agenda that you wish to have a comment or discussion about? Okay, I don't see anything. And
So Your Honor, just to make sure everyone's on the same page, when if there is a closed session established, then there is a link for it in case we had one. I will keep this meeting open, but you will need to use the link that you used to get into this meeting to come back into it. But it shouldn't be too difficult because, like I said, I'll have it open, and whenever you come back, I will be here. So.
very good. And for the council, we should have we all should have received in the invite to the closed session Zoom that Mr. Sal had sent out, and I see nods. Yes, I just want to make sure we know where to find it. That's good. That's really Vince. If you don't have anything further, I don't know that there's much else that we are for this work session tonight. Andrew, you have a question.
If I could just bother Vince for a moment here, is there an update on the principal shopping district? Any movement on that, or is that just on hold because of COVID? Because
no, actually, Ms. Knoll and I are going to be meeting tomorrow. She's put together a timeline. If you recall, we talked a little bit about amending the Downtown Development Authority district. We're looking at possibly it will change some of the DDA development plan. And then There's an aspect of it that is running through the Citizens Planning Commission because we are going to be amending our downtown master plan to reference the principal shopping district. I believe Mr. Green said that'll be on the January Citizens Planning Commission, and that triggers a 60-day requirement from other jurisdictions to respond. And so we anticipate somewhere in mid-March that should be completed, mid-late March. And then there's a series of steps, and I think Ms. Knoll had a question that'll involve the city attorney regarding the manner for implementing the principal shopping district assessment. Typically, they're going to have 5 different steps. The first being, an introduction, council providing direction, and then coming back with a full report, scheduling a hearing of necessity in the 3rd step. 4th step would just be scheduling a public hearing once the assessment rule is ready. So we're basically going to have this all mapped out for you, and you'll probably see Ms. Knoll within the next month walking council through the whole series of actions that this is going to require. Actually, I'm glad you brought it up.
Thanks for the update. Yeah, it's just, okay. Yeah, looks like we're rolling on it. Thank you.
Yep.
Final comments with Mr. Pastu or administration? Okay, I don't see any. It's about 7:12, 7:13. And if there's nothing further, we can close the work session and we'll have time to prepare as the 7:30 arrives for the start of the city council meeting. So at this time, I'll adjourn the city council work session and we'll all be prepared to zoom back in here shortly. Thank you.
And a reminder, we're still live on YouTube.
Yes, so watch your microphones and if you wish to do, but if you're still on, you'll be heard and recorded. Thank you. Okay.
I have 7:30, Your Honor.
Thank you, Clerk Treasurer. I have 7 o'clock or 7:30 as well. It is 7:30 at this time. We'll call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Remember to let us know where you're located as well. Councilperson Felder,
Present, City of Monroe.
Whitman,
She's excused.
Angeli,
Present, City of Monroe.
Vining,
Here, City of Monroe.
Germaine,
Here, City of Monroe.
Wilmore,
Here, Monroe, Michigan.
Mayor Clark.
Present, City of Monroe, Michigan.
Thank you.
Next item, the invocation, if you would, and then the Pledge of Allegiance to follow.
We have faith and hope in each other and our city. We ask for your guidance in the decisions that are made here as we work together for the welfare of this community and all of its residents.
Thank you. And I ask you all, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag
of the United
of the
States
United
of America
States of America,
and to the republic
and the republic
for which it stands,
stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
and
liberty
liberty
and justice
and
for all.
justice for all.
Thank you all. Clerk, the next item.
The next item are any amendments to the agenda.
Before we get there, our work session, we had an opportunity to discuss briefly, but for those that are present, I want to make sure you know there will be amendments to the agenda. There's items that came in late Friday after the agenda was published. And one of the items is regarding a closed session, being mindful of, as we place this for the time for all, asking that this be placed in the beginning of the meeting, but after the first citizens comment time. And then also the item that council can address later, that item 2987 be pulled for further discussion later on. So looking for a motion or any other comment from council.
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that after citizens' comments, item number 5, we insert closed session for the purpose of to discuss land acquisition.
Second.
There's a motion by Councilman Echolongi, supported by Councilman Lamore, that the amendment to the agenda, that closed session regarding land acquisition be inserted on the agenda following item 5, the first citizens comment opportunity. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder,
Yes.
Angeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Germaine,
Yes,
Wilmore,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item on the agenda are citizen comments not related to an agenda item.
Thank you. And as we proceed, as we always do with our rules of the chamber, I see we do have some attendees. We'll see if there's hands get raised that the clerk will and I will monitor. But as we are all listening, that ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. At the start, please state your name and your jurisdiction of residency, as well as where you may be required on that. And I think that's what I covered it all.
So Katie Beth Davis has her hand raised. I will
Move her forward.
Over.
Good. I see that you're forward. Katie Beth, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Hi, everyone. Katie Beth Davis, 15277 La Pleasance Road. Thanks again for everything that you guys do. Tonight, I do have a petition that I'm not going to be submitting to you guys. It's going to be for the Monroe County Board of Commissioners, but I did want to voice my concerns on the within the past few years, the newly erected James Monroe statue that resides in front of the courthouse. It's concerning to me because even though our county, our town is named for James Monroe, he's never been to the region, never even visited the area, and is also a slave owner. During the course of his lifetime, he had owned over 200 slaves. I do find it concerning that there is a slave owner, no matter what he has contributed to America. The fact that he is a slave owner in front of a courthouse, I believe sends the wrong message to people of color who are fighting for their rights in the middle of, civil rights that we've been fighting for hundreds of years. And it's just like an overall theme in Monroe that we have statues for men, Caucasian men at that, who weren't always fair to people of color. So that's all my comments. Thank you very much.
All right, Katie Beth, thank you for your comments. I'll stop that, reset. I'll look to the clerk. I also looking at the attendees. Other comments from those present this evening? You can either raise your hand or so we can log in. I see no hands raised at this time. Clerk Treasurer, yourself?
Nor do I.
Very well. We'll move forward. Next item on the agenda, please.
So the next item on the agenda was the inserted item to go into closed session.
Thank you. We'll need a motion. Council Michelangeli.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion that we go into closed session for the purpose of discussing land acquisition.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Michelangeli, supported by Councilman Lamore to go into closed executive session for the purpose stated. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder,
Yes.
Michelangeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Germaini,
Yes.
Lamore,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Okay, we'll depart here. I know Clerk Treasurer will be remaining, and we'll catch council and us. We'll move to the other Zoom identification meeting. Thank you. Okay, Michelle, was going to give you send you a call, but I think it's just quicker just to come back on. You get us as we all get back into
I
service.
figured it out.
Yeah.
Thank you, though.
All right. I see we might have at least one of our members that council members that is as an attendee.
I see him. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's the only one I see so far.
Oh, Brian. Is Brian in there? All right. I think that's it now. I got Brian. It's coming in.
Yep, he gets back. Okay, I think all of council is back.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion that we go back into regular session.
Second,
Motion by Councilman Nicolai, supported by Councilman Moore to go back into open session. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder?
Present. Do I
I
need
can-
location again?
No, that's
just- Yes, that we're going back, go back in.
Oh,
yeah.
just to go back in? Yes, I vote yes.
Thank you.
Echo Angeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
yes,
Wilmore,
yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes, thank you. And going back to our agenda then, clerk, next item, please.
The next item is communication, item 2991, schedule work session for January 4th, 2021.
Vince, do you need any information on this to present? Otherwise, we'll be looking for acceptance motion from the council.
Just that basically it's kind of an oversight on my part, and but I would like to meet on the 4th to go through with the proposed capital improvements program with the city council.
Very well.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion that we schedule a work session for January 4th, 2021 at 6 p.m.
Second,
Motion by Councilman Klein, supported by Councilman Moore to accept the communication as stated. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder? Felder?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Echo Angeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
yes,
Wilmore,
yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is under council action. It's item 2988, Port of Monroe Deficit Elimination Plan Resolution.
Thank you. I think Mr. Pastu or maybe Mr. Sell might have some.
Yes, I'm going to have Mr. Sell do the introduction.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is one of the things that do at the end of every fiscal year. We determine whether any of the city's funds require a deficit elimination plan. And as you saw in your packet, there was a letter from the Department of Treasury that there is one required for the Port of Monroe. The Port of Monroe is a little different than the general fund in that it's reported as an enterprise fund. So when the Department of Treasury is looking at their financial statements, they're primarily looking at how do their current assets versus their current liabilities match up. They don't look at things like long-term capital assets or long-term debt when they're determining whether there's a deficit. They're just looking at the more shorter-term assets like cash and accounts receivable and shorter-term liabilities like accounts payable. In the Port of Monroe's situation, if you were to take the current assets minus the current liabilities from their statement of net position for June 30th, 2020, it would come out to, well, at least in the formula that the Department of Treasury uses, it would come out to a negative $29,317. And that's the reason that a deficit is required, or deficit elimination plan is required. And in order to meet the Department of Treasury's requirements, what we have to do is basically submit a projected budget that shows that the deficit that existed as of June 30th, 2020 would be eliminated during the term of that projected budget. So in the resolution, I've listed a couple things. The primary reason that there is a deficit in the first place is that in the port's liabilities, there's about $140,000 of interest, accrued interest payable, that will either be forgiven. In fact, a little over 10,000 has already been forgiven, or it will be paid from brownfield tax captures that are going to be collected in future years from the Port of Monroe site. The biggest portion that's there is accrued interest on a loan that they got to do improvements at the dock through the MEDC. So about 100, I think it's about 130,000 of that accrued interest is from that loan as well. And that interest will either be, like I said, be paid from those future brownfield tax captures, or if the brownfield tax captures don't generate enough money to pay off the full loan, then it will be forgiven. So it's kind of a liability where the revenues are coming in future years, and that's the reason there's a deficit at this point. So I've described that, tried to describe that in the resolution, but I've also included a 3-year budget projection based on the budget that the port submitted with our most recent budget adoption. And the first section of that is just their total revenues and expenditures, and that's going to continue to show a negative or a deficit position because the port has a pretty big environmental liability on their balance sheet that has been there for many years, and not sure if it'll ever be relieved. There's many responsible parties for that environmental liability, so there's a chance that unless the state or the EPA gets interested in pushing it, nothing will probably ever happen with it. But at the bottom section, is where you get into the current assets versus the current liability section. You saw a CA minus CL there, and you can see in 2020-21, it starts with a negative 29,317, and it's actually projecting that they'll be out of a deficit by the end of the 2021 fiscal year if they meet their budget projection. And then it shows that they stay out of a deficit for the remaining 2 years of the projection. So what you're being asked to do is to adopt this resolution. I would then have the clerk's office certify it, and then I would submit it to the Department of Treasury. They would review it and likely certify it without any questions. One of the reasons it's important for us to do this is that another thing we have to do at the end of the year is issue a qualifying statement with the Department of Treasury, and what that allows us to do is actually issue debt. One of the questions on the qualifying statement is, have you filed a deficit elimination plan? So we kind of have to get this done before we can do the qualifying statement. Both of them are due by the end of the calendar year. So I think that's probably enough for me. So I'll take any questions if anybody has them.
I was on mute. Brian, start with you, and then.
I'm gonna make a motion, Your Honor.
Okay.
I'd make a motion to approve the deficit elimination plan resolution for the Port of Monroe and authorize the Assistant City Manager, Finance Director to submit the resolution to the Michigan Department of Treasury and have it certified by our city clerk.
Second.
The motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilman Felder, to on item 2988 to Port of Monroe elimination plan resolution be accepted. I give an opportunity to see if there's any other questions or comments from council. I think it was explained well, but there might be a lingering question. I see none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder,
Yes.
Michaelangeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Lemany,
yes,
Lamore,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
The next item is under the consent agenda, and for item B, approval of payments, the amount should read $859,039.34, 859,039.34.
Okay, with that, on the consent agenda, items from the consent agenda, council wishes to have pulled for further discussion. I'd request that a councilperson pull 2987. Councilman Lamore, I see your hand up.
Yes, I'd like to pull item number 2987, Your Honor.
Okay, other items on the consent agenda? Other items on the consent agenda that those in attendance wish to have discussed further? I see no hands.
Nor do I.
Okay, with that, a motion be in order.
Your Honor,
Councilman Felder.
I motion that all items on the consent agenda not pulled for further discussion be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted.
Support.
There's a motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Michelangelo, that the remaining items on the consent agenda not pulled for further discussion be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, resolutions adopted. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder,
Yes.
Michaelangeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
yes,
Lamore,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
The next item is item 2987, holiday grant budget amendment.
Very well. I know, Councilman, you pulled that, but we're looking for some information from the city manager on this. Mr. Pastu.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Your Honor. Essentially, what I'm asking is there's two parts to this. One is for a grant. We got $5,000 from DTE Foundation for new holiday decorations that was supplemented by existing funds in the mayor council budget, as well as communications, but also the DDA contributed additional money as well. But the thing I'm asking about is, I indicated in the second grant was a grant the fire department received. I put in the amount of $1,400 and it should be $1,600. And so in the motion itself, if you would change that from $1,400 to $1,600, that would resolve our issue. Again, no net cost to the general fund for that as well.
Any questions from council? With that, if there's no questions, a motion would be in order.
Your Honor?
Councilman Moore.
Yes, I make a motion to approve amending the budget for donations from the DTE Foundation in the amount of $5,000 for Christmas decorations, and from the Marathon Petroleum Foundation in the amount of $1,400.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
$1,600.
$1,600, apologize, for the fire department purchase of water safety equipment, and approve the assistant city manager / finance director to allocate the funds to the mayor, council, communications department, and fire department budgets.
Second.
second,
Okay, we've got a couple there, but motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilman Felder on item 2987, the holiday grant budget amendments as stated and as amended, be approved. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder,
Yes.
Michaelangeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
yes,
Lamore,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
I have no further items, Your Honor.
Thank you. It's council comments. It is December. Councilman Felder, comments this evening.
Just a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everyone coming up here. This will be, I think, our last meeting before January, so we'll see you all in the new year. That's all I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilman Michelangelo.
Yes, Your Honor. I just wanted to thank the administration for coordinating the tour last week of the Visitor Center and the ALCC. It was much appreciated. And I just want to wish everybody in the community and on council Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Viney.
Yes, Your Honor. I just want to wish everyone happy holidays. And that's all I have.
Wonderful. Thank you. Councilwoman Germaine.
to add on to the wonderful tour that we got last Thursday, I want to say how impressed I was with the improvements. And I'm looking forward to the vision of both buildings. The programs that they're going to have going forward is very impressive to me. And I thank them and thank Mark Cochran and everyone for putting together the tour. And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you. Councilman Lamore.
Mele Kaliki Maka. That's the Polynesian Merry Christmas. I hope everybody can see family this year. And if you can't, please cherish the moments when you can. Thank you again to city staff for getting that effort put together for getting us over to the ALCC, as well as the Opportunity Center, as well as the new Battlefield Center. What great environments. Looking forward to seeing it really come to fruition. And that's it. Happy New Year.
Thank you. I'll just follow through and say I hope everybody has, I want to wish a Merry Christmas and holidays for all the celebrations that occur at this festive time. And please be safe, be healthy, and do so in the best you can. And I hope all your families and the families of the community are well. Which brings me to the downtown. Of course, our downtown businesses and continuation for local support opportunities to still present themselves to interact and do that safely. I keep that in mind for not only for us and the administration, but also our residents. They need our support at this time as well. And then on the agenda this evening was about the decorations. You saw them were continuing. I appreciate the support of the council and the DTE Foundation's funding support for that, but also the Downtown Development Authority. They provided funding, bought some, and the Downtown Monroe Business Network, who bought some new decorations related to the Lawrenceur Square Pavilion. So everybody had a part. It looks wonderful. In fact, if you haven't been down there tonight, the remaining items were finally delivered. They got out of the Port of New York, got on a truck, arrived, and my sincere thanks to the staff to get them up today. So go by and see some more great opportunities. Please tour, drive through the downtown, do so safely. Those are my comments for this evening, and I'll go to Clerk Treasurer Lavoy.
I too want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and happy whatever holiday it is that you choose to celebrate this season. And of course, I'm wishing all of us a safe and healthy and very prosperous new year, as we hopefully will begin to see some recovery from what we've all gone through. And I just wanted to thank everyone in the community that I've seen all of the efforts that people are making, from supporting local restaurants that are having a tough time right now, to just continuing to give what they can to all of the local organizations, nonprofit organizations we have that are really an important part of the safety net that is there for so many. So I just wanted to give that shout out. As tough as it's been, Monroe is a very giving community, its residents in the city, and I appreciate that they've continued to do that even in these really difficult times. So happy holidays and enjoy.
Thanks, Michelle. I want to add to that the downtown businesses. I think that besides decorations they've done in the past and being festive, and there's many more that have done as well and added to it. So thanks to all the businesses as well. City Manager, Mr. Pestu.
I have nothing else to add, Your Honor, other than wishing everybody a happy holidays.
Very good. Thank you. So at this time, we have next is citizens' comments. Final comments, if there's present. I see we still have some attendees, so I'll ask if there's any that are present as attendee wish to speak to raise a hand at this time. I see one. I'll leave that to the clerk to move forward.
All right, I have moved Cole forward.
All right, Cole, you are, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, just please your name, location of jurisdiction, and then also mindful of the 3 minutes, please move forward. Thank you.
Sure. Cole Bean, City of Monroe, 48162. Yeah, I just, one, obviously, happy holidays to everyone. It's been a tough year, and I'm sure you're all looking forward to taking a break. I'm currently recovering from surgery myself at home. But I did just want to echo, I know Katie Beth spoke earlier, and I did want to also echo that I also think that it would be a nice change to move the statue. I don't think having someone that has owned other human beings being in front of the courthouse sends a good message to our community. I believe it's not that old of a statue. I'm not sure exactly when it was erected, but more to the point, I do think that obviously we have a kind of citywide branding issue with their name, Monroe, but I think we're kind of lucky in a way that Monroe is a pretty famous name. There's someone I think even more famous than James Monroe, which we were named after, and that's Marilyn Monroe. So I would just like to make a lighthearted suggestion that maybe we replace James Monroe with Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe was a civil rights activist, a sex icon, a feminist, and she unfortunately died from drug overdose. And I think that's a conversation that we have a lot here in Monroe that we really need to address. And I think she could be a really good replacement for an old white guy who owned people. So just a thought. I know you all want to get to your holidays. I just wanted to bring that up, and thank you for giving us a chance to talk.
Thank you, Cole. Clerk Treasurer, I'll see if there's other
We do have one more.
Okay, hand raised. I might have missed that. Oh, yeah, I see it. Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Graham, you have been moved forward. Do you comments this evening?
Yeah, Graham Denton, 217 West 2nd Street, Monroe, Michigan. I just wanted to start by wishing everyone a happy holiday. And I don't have any suggestions for maybe what you thought I was going to talk about, maybe just a few facts. That statue went up in 2017. And actually, I wasn't searching for any information on that statue recently, as you know, Custer, but I got to talk to the museum director as a result. And he just happened to mention this statue, and that he opposed it at the time because it was completely tone deaf to put up a slave owner in 2017. So he mentioned that to me, which was interesting. And just in general too, the study of statues in this century, they mainly go up not because we've conquered another civilization or anything like that. It's more so usually a group of private individuals, potentially wealthy, potential political power gets together and decides these things, who is important to us. But that has far-reaching effects on the community that they decide it for. I guess in this case, it was 80 individuals, private donors, and it was done in a rather quick fashion. So that's all the information I have on that. Like I said, I wasn't really looking for any information. It just kind of came my way like that. But I just wanted to wish everyone a happy holidays and talk to you soon.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you for your comments this evening. Clerk Treasurer, I'll see if there's other attendees that are any new hands raised. I don't see any myself.
I don't see any.
Okay, very well. So with that, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilwoman Morse, by Councilman Michelangelo to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder,
Yes.
Michelangelo,
Yes.
Twining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
Yes.
Lamore,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes, thank you all. It's a pleasure seeing everybody as always, and please be safe. Have a wonderful holiday and Christmas with your family, and just all be safe and healthy for the 2021. Look forward to seeing everybody yet again.
All right. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.